Right. People are starting to come in, really exciting. We're going to be waiting a couple more minutes just for more people to come in. But to all those that have come now, welcome, and we'll be starting soon.
Awesome.
Sophie, would you like me to put this outline just into the chat section if anyone wants it to get it?
That'd be amazing. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Hi, everyone. We are starting very, very soon. We're just going to wait for more people to come in.
Will it be possible to view a recording after?
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right. Okay.
You know, Hill, I'm going to send this to you. You could put it up. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you. Make it easier for me.
Thank you all for coming. We are so excited about this. And we'll be starting very, very soon.
Hill, I'm going to send it to you as a PDF. Of it.
Perfect.
Okay, a second.
All right. Hi, everyone. So we're going to get started. My name is Sophie Dubitsky. I am one of the co-heads of the Young Olim department. And we are really excited to start this webinar. We know that one of the most stressful things of making Aliyah is understanding the finances in Israel, whether it's trying to figure out how to save our money properly, how taxes work, and how to buy items like houses, cars, electronics. So that's something that we really found important. One of our biggest goals was trying to explain finances. So that's the goal, that we're going to talk about finances specifically for Young Olim. I want to get us started right away. So I'm just going to hand over to our founder, Rabbi Lippman, to just say a quick few words, and then we're going to get started.
Thank you so much, Sophie. It's fantastic to be with all of you. It's really exciting to be at this first inaugural event of the Young Olim Department of Yad Olim. I want to thank Sophie and Hillel, who took the initiative to say, we want to have a Young Olim department to meet the needs of Young Olim who have very specific needs and need for support, need for information, need for community. And that's the goal of this department. I want to thank them for the initiative. I want to thank Gedaliah and Eliezer for joining us tonight, and all of you. And please spread the word to all of your friends that they can know that there's a home for Young Olim in Yad Olim, where we hope to meet all the needs and help all of you to really thrive in Israel. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Hillel. I'm going to remind you to keep on the lookout for many other programs, including next week, which you'll hear about after the end of tonight's program. Hillel, I'll give it back to you, and everyone just have an informative and educational night.
Okay. Hi everybody. We have two incredible people here from a company called My Israel Home, who have graciously given us their time. So I'll let their expertise speak for themselves. So without further ado, Gedaliah, I'll hand this over to you.
Terrific. Thank you, Hillel. Thank you, Rabbi Lippman and Sophie. My name is Gedaliah Borvick, and I'm joined by my partner, Eliezer Goldberg. We've been together for, I don't know, Eliezer, probably 12 years now. We have great zechut to help hundreds of families fulfill their dream of purchasing a home in Israel. Some people making Aliyah, some people who made Aliyah, and some people not making Aliyah, but they want a place in Israel. I could talk a lot about Eliezer, but I'm not going to. You don't want to embarrass him, but he's my secret weapon, and I think you could enjoy hearing from him tonight. He's chock full of information. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a program called Considering Buying an Apartment in Israel, Top 10 Things to Know. And what we're going to be doing is focusing primarily on the needs of young Olim, their particular needs. And as we go along, if people have questions, we ask you to please write them down in the chat section. Sophie, Hillel, we will address all the questions at the end, but if anyone has particular questions that you think are worthy, just stop the presses, we could discuss it in the middle, okay? But we will address all the questions at the end. So I sent over to Hill, I don't know if you put into the chat section,
Begin right now.
Okay, terrific, thank you. And if you don't have it, it's okay, you'll take notes. Top 10 things to know. Now, a lot of the things we're going to discuss are things that you already know. But what our goal is we're going to start with these people. They may know a lot, they may know nothing. We're going to work with the premise that they didn't know nothing, and then we'll start building you up from there, okay? So a lot of the Olim, not all of you are from the, oh, there you go, thank you, Hillel, from the United States. But if you came from the United States, then you do not know the metric system. So, and a lot of us were very scared of the metric system. So when your fourth grade teacher said to you, the world is going metric, she was right. The entire world has gone metric except for the United States. And tonight, very quickly, just for 2 minutes, we're going to go metric. You probably know this because you made Aliyah or you're making Aliyah. So number one is measurements. When you buy an apartment, let's say you see an ad in the apartment, it says 100 square meter apartment. So the first thing you have to know is what's 100 square meters? Well, what's 1 square meter? 1 square meter equals 10.76 square feet, okay? 1 meter equals 10.76 square feet, or if you're not so particularly great with numbers, 1 meter equals almost 11 square feet. So if it says 100 square meters in the ad, that means you know it's almost 1,100 square foot apartment. Then the ad says 4 rooms. What does 4 rooms mean? So if it says 4 rooms, the way it works in Israel, which I'm sure many of you do know, because if you didn't buy it, you rent, but just in case you don't know, we're running through all this, is 4 rooms means 3 bedrooms. Whatever the room count is, -1 is the amount of bedrooms. So if it says 3 rooms, that means there's 2 bedrooms. And if it says there's 5 rooms, it's 4 bedrooms. That room that's not the bedroom is called the salon, which is a living room and dining room. And even though we know that the most important room in any Jewish household is the kitchen, right? However, that's not part of the room count. I'll even go one step further. The second most important room in any household is the bathroom. And that's not part of the room count either. So it's very important when you see 4 rooms to ask how many bathrooms. It could be in an older apartment, you'll get 1 bathroom or 1.5 bathrooms. A half bathroom means just a toilet and a sink, as opposed to a full bathroom, which means a toilet, a sink, and a shower or bathtub. So it's very important to ask when you see these ads, 4 rooms, well, you know, how many bathrooms are there? So that's number 2. And the third thing we want to say, and I'm sure you guys all know this, is the floor. In America, when you walk into an apartment, a building, the first floor, the ground floor you walk into is called the first floor. And in Israel, as you all know, it's called 0. So if they say, let's say in the ad, it says the first floor, then you know it doesn't mean the ground floor, it means 1 floor up. And that's not only just nice to know, that's important to know, because some people might not be able to handle steps. They might need an elevator if it's not on the ground floor. So it's important to know if it doesn't say ground floor or 0 or FS, that if it says first floor or second floor, and you, or maybe your parents or grandparents that'll come visit, and you will need an elevator. So it's important to ask the question whether they have an elevator. So that's number 1. We talked about measurements. We talked about square meters, room count, and the floor. Okay. The second thing I want to talk about is real estate professionals. I would like to tell you that the most important person that you're going to be dealing with is your real estate broker, me. But that, if I said that to you, I'd be a big fat liar. It's not true. The most important person you're going to be dealing with when you buy a home in Israel is your lawyer. And the reason is unlike in America, where there is, for example, there is title insurance. In Israel, there is no title insurance. So your lawyer has to make sure that there's no easements, there's no liens on title, there's no clouds on title, which means that there's nothing in all the reports out there that would create any problem for you, A, to buy it, and B, even if you can buy it, to get a mortgage. We'll talk about mortgages a little bit later. So you want to make sure your lawyer is good, number one, because they are going to be taking care of making sure they have clean title. As we said, there is no title insurance. And number two, in America, when you or your parents bought a home in America, they had something called Bloomberg forms. There's basically preset templates of contracts. And there were a few things, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 issues that the lawyers might cross out and make a few changes, and that was it. But in Israel, when you buy a home, an apartment, or a house, it's irrelevant. The contract starts out like this. It's a blank piece of paper. And everything that you think you're getting, that the developer said to you that you're going to get, or if you're buying it secondhand, the seller said they'll leave for you, unless it's in that contract. When you show up the day of your closing, and if God forbid what you were promised isn't there, if it's not in your contract, then you do not have legal recourse. So it's very important that your lawyer makes sure that everything that you think you're getting is in fact included in the contract, so that there won't be any surprises at the end. I'll tell you a crazy story. I once sold my home, and we're sitting at the contract, and the lawyer said to me, do you have regular grass or artificial turf? I said, I have regular grass. And why are you asking me such a crazy question? And she said, because 6 months ago, someone bought a home, and they showed up after the closing, there was a mound of dirt on their front lawn, and because the seller took their artificial turf with them. So everything that you think you're getting, even if it sounds crazy and seems nutty, make sure it's in your contract. Because if it's not in the contract, as I said, you won't have legal recourse. That's number one. That's in terms of if you see the list I gave you, real estate professionals, A was lawyers, and B was other professionals. Make sure you're surrounded by, so that's number one. A good place not to save money is with your lawyer. Not that you should overpay, but the point is a good lawyer is worth her weight in gold. The other thing is you're going to need other professionals. If you're going to be buying an existing place, you want to get, Israelis might say to you, no, it's not important, but we say it's always important. Get yourself an engineer to go through the property to make sure there are no surprises. Because you might pay a few thousand shekel for an engineer, but God forbid there's a problem later on, you'll be stuck. That's why, in America, everything after they have a contract is subject to an engineer. In Israel, once you sign the contract, we'll get to it a little bit later on. Once you sign the contract, that's it. So before you sign the contract, you're going to get your engineer in. And before you sign your contract is when later on we're going to talk about financing, is when you're going to make sure that you can get a mortgage so that you can afford this property that you're buying. You will not sign a contract subject to financing, subject to engineering, subject to anything in Israel. That's a default. Every now and then it's different, but the default is it's as is. It's as is, and it's not, the contract is not subject to anything. Other professionals that you might want to retain, so we said lawyer, we said engineer. If the property needs work, you might want to bring in a kablan, a contractor, to find out what work has to be done, how much it'll cost. And so we're very happy, by the way. I'm sure your Hebrew is much better than mine. You're young folks, but if you ever need names of good, honest people, real estate professionals, we're happy to share the names that we have. We're happy to share our Rolodex with you. So that's number 2, real estate professionals. Now, number 3 and number 4 on our top 10 things to know is usage and priorities list. And when we go out to America, might be talking to people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, or 70s. They'll have different usage ideas than young folks making Aliyah. So Eliezer, why don't you just talk about in terms of usage and what we're talking about, and in terms of a priorities list?
So I'll say the following. Everybody has a priority list, whether you're making Aliyah, whether you were born in Israel, or whether you're just visiting. And the reality is that no one, unless you get Gan Eden, no one ends up checking all those boxes. You have to be very lucky in order to check all the boxes in your wish list. So if you have a big family or you want a garden, or you have to decide what's most important for you in terms of priorities, and that will guide you when you're looking for a property, as where to look, what to give up, what's most important, what is secondary. And so I can tell you that I had a conversation, I guess on Sunday, with a family who made Aliyah, and I think they're ending up, they own something specifically in Jerusalem, but they're ending up in Modi'in. They're renting out and renting something in Modi'in for the first year, because their kids have a lot of friends who recently made Aliyah and live in Modi'in, and they want them to have a soft and easy landing. So they'd rather have their kids in the same schools that their friends from America are going to, in a way that it makes it easy, rather than being the only child who's Lech Hadash in the class. So that can be a priority to direct you where to look for property. The other priority we were talking about, and I think it's not relevant. It is relevant for every Jew, but as Olim Chadashim, I don't know if it's the most important, is if someone has this dream, and we do actually, we sold a few years ago a unit to the guy who's made Aliyah, and his priorities, dream, he retired, and all his life his dream was that when he lives in Jerusalem, he wants to go every day and daven in the Kotel. So obviously his priority directs him to properties which are in walking distance to Kotel. On the other hand, because he had a limited budget, so he gave up on 1 bedroom and he took a smaller unit. Now, if you're a family with 4 kids, you're not moving into a 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom unit just because you love the idea of going to daven daily in the Kotel. So it has to balance up. And when you're thinking or beginning your property search, it's always advised, we always advise our clients, actually we have a bit of back and forth with them on emails, creating some kind of a wish list and needs, not only a wish list. Wish, we all want to live in a house with 8 bedrooms and a swimming pool within walking distance to Kotel or to with the ocean views, but realistically, you know, what our needs are as a family making Aliyah, maybe jobs, work. You know, if I'm a specialist in a certain field and most of the jobs are in the Tel Aviv area, or I'm a doctor, and so I'll be looking to live somewhere where there's hospitals and I can find a job. All these priorities have to become your wish list when you start looking for your real estate, for your house in Israel.
Right. And now, Eliezer, it's interesting you're saying, because when we work with our clients, we work with them, you know, a lot of them, you know, on WhatsApp. We create a WhatsApp group and we create their buyer's profile. And the last question, the $1 million question, is literally the $1 million question, is what's your budget? You know, because that will dictate, you know, it's great to have your wish list. And it's great to try to achieve all the goals in your wish list, but it's also important to be gamish, to be flexible, so that your wish list and your budget can work together to find you the right property for you. So we will go into more information later on, but let's go on to number 5, apartment condition. A lot of times clients want to buy an apartment that I want to buy an apartment that's in move-in condition. I'm making Aliyah. I just made Aliyah. I have enough on my head. I've got kids. I got this. I got that. I want to get an apartment that's in move-in condition. The problem is when you buy something that's in move-in condition, Eliezer, I'm going to hand this off to you in a moment, is that when you buy something in move-in condition, it's going to cost a lot more than if you're willing to do renovations. So Eliezer, remember that example that we showed a client 2 apartments on the same floor. One apartment was like 40,000 shekel a square. It was in Yerushalayim, so it's big numbers. 40,000 shekel a square meter for a beautiful renovated apartment, move-in condition. Just, you know, bring your toothbrush. And the other apartment was like 25,000 shekel a square meter for the exact same apartment, the same floor. There were mirror images of each other, and there was a 15,000 shekel savings. But you know, the original condition apartment really needed work. So that sounds great. But then the big question is, Eliezer, as our construction maven, how much is it going to cost to take that apartment and to do the renovations?
So it depends who you ask. If you ask an Israeli, who's going to bring in the plumber by himself, and by the way, not all Israelis, but if you know a bit and you have a few friends and you can work it out, so you probably do it for much less. But if you're going to take a contractor and do a proper job, a designer, and gut out the apartment and redo it from scratch, including all the infrastructure, cabinetry, light fixtures and all these things, air conditioning units, heating. If you're in Jerusalem, it's very important to have heating. This winter's here cold. You would be spending probably 7,000 shekels a square meter. That's just, well, the dollar is a bit low, but it's just over $2,000. We always said $2,000 when the dollar was 3.5 to a shekel. So you could spend less, and you can spend more, but it's a good number to work with. If at the end of the day you spend less, you end up spending 5,000, so you've saved. But when you're running through your numbers, take into account 7,000 shekels a square meter to be on the safe side.
To do everything in a renovation.
Yeah,
So
on the other hand,
go back. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off. On the other hand, we showed a client yesterday 2 units. Probably most of you know where the Wolfson Towers are in Rechavia. 2 units in the same building, not in the same building, 2 buildings, one on number 7 and one on number 9. The number 7 unit was renovated by the current owners before selling. He's never used it since the renovation. He thought he would make a premium by renovating it and selling it. So he did an okay job. He didn't do a great job. He didn't put a lot of thought into it. He just replaced tiles, pipes, and all those things. He put in a kitchen and so, but he didn't think of it as a user. So he did a job in order to Yoitze Yedei Chovah. He wanted to say, I'm selling a renovated apartment, and whoever buys that apartment will be paying a premium because it's so-called renovated, and he'll have to spend more money doing adjustments to make it pretty. So some people are terrified by the idea of renovating in Israel. They don't want to get messed up. They don't know the system. They don't know the people. And so, and others say, listen, I'd rather spend less money on the purchase, buy something which is a run-down place, or even in good condition, but it was built 50 or 60 years ago. And I'd rather, put in the time and money for it. I'll get a good project manager, designer will manage it for it, and I'll renovate it the way I want and the way I need, so it fits my needs. So it really depends on what you're comfortable with.
I will tell you that, if you go back to our example, the 40,000 versus 25,000, of course, it's 7,000 shekel to do renovations is an 8,000 shekel savings if you're comfortable doing your own renovations. Now, and some people I got to sleep at night. It's not going to work for me. I'm a nervous chalaria. I'm going to go crazy. I need to buy existing, and it has to be in good condition. So you got to know yourself. But if you're willing to do renovations, that's a good place to be able to save money. If you're comfortable, getting your hands dirty doesn't mean you have to do it, but getting yourself a designer who will guide you, and that oftentimes a designer can also serve as the point person to hire the kablan, the plumber, the electrician, etc. So that's one place where one person can save money. Another place where people could save money, if you're following on our list, is 5B, is buying on paper. Now, when I started in the business like almost 12 years ago, I figured, why would I want to sell on paper? I heard all these crazy stories about my parents' friends 35 years ago. They bought an apartment, unbeknownst to them, someone else bought the same apartment. The developer said, I'll see you in court. I don't care. Or they said, it'll be ready in 18 months. 7 years later, it's still not ready. The developer says, so sue me, So there are all these crazy, I said, I don't want to get involved in this. I'm going to, we're just going to sell existing apartments. But lo and behold, 12 years later, over half of our activities is selling in new projects. And the reason is because, well, there's a lot of reasons. I'm going to hand it off to Eliezer to talk about it. But in short, the reason is that, as you all know, that there's a dearth of homes in Israel. The demand is much greater than the supply. And therefore, for various reasons that Eliezer will get into, buying on paper, is a great idea. And there are a lot of protections that protect buyers. Young people, you're saying, I have only X amount of money. I have to be so careful. I don't have money to lose. Now, the truth is, doesn't matter how old you are, you don't want to lose your money. But you feel particularly very financially, it's like a noose around your neck. It gets tighter and tighter. So you want to make sure you're doing something smart. So Eliezer, let's talk about why people are buying on paper now. Even all those people, especially this past year when people couldn't come to Israel, most of the deals were on paper. But for people making Aliyah, why people could buy on paper? What are the protections for them?
Okay, so I'll talk first of all, why would we consider buying on paper? It's obviously, if something exists and checks most of our boxes on our wish list, why not buy that? On the other hand, in a lot of markets, I'm not talking about the big, populated areas like central Jerusalem, that you can barely find things which are being built and will be built because of very little and future development here. But if we're looking at towns like Kiryat Gat, Karmei Gat, and areas like that, or upper in the north or Rehovot area, you find a lot of properties which are being built and on a Beit Shemesh on paper. When you look at a property which was built 40 or 50 years ago, it lacks of a lot of amenities that come, with modern properties. Basic things like an elevator. Buildings in Israel until this very day, if they're building a lower building of 3 floors, 4 floors, they don't always put in an elevator because they want to save money, and they say, okay, just for 8 apartments, we won't put in an elevator. But until, I would say 30 years ago, buildings in Jerusalem never had elevators. There were very few elevators in central Jerusalem buildings. Then parking, until 30 years ago, it wasn't a big thing. So sometimes a family would have a car, sometimes a family wouldn't have a car. Nowadays, every family has at least 2 cars, and if there's growing up children, sometimes more. So it's essential to have a parking spot, and parking is getting tougher and tougher on the streets in central towns. So you want a parking spot. Storage room, coming from big homes in America, you think, well, a storage room, who needs a storage room? Especially a small 4, 5, 6 square meters, which is half a bedroom, size of half a room. Who needs such a small storage room? But when you come into the Israeli apartments, which are small, storage becomes a big thing, out of season clothes, your sukkah, your Pesach dishes, these things you need storage, your suitcases.
Yes, suitcases, sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Suitcases, you need a storage room. I can talk about environmental things most people are not aware of, but in modern buildings like in Jerusalem, where there's radon gas in the rock, where the foundations of the buildings go down to, once upon a time they weren't aware of the need to ventilate and build exhaust to get this gas out of the building. And if you're not aware of that, you may find some buildings have issues with that, but in modern buildings they build systems to get rid of it. We're talking about even if you renovate your apartment and you put in $200,000 and you have a beautiful unit, but the apartment upstairs has still got the pipes from 60 years ago. So if they have a plumbing issue, suddenly it becomes your plumbing issue, and that's lo naim. It's Shabbat elevators, even in all the buildings, even if there is an elevator and you're on the 4th floor, it's not always a Shabbat elevator. Sometimes the elevator is too old to have the Shabbat mechanism chip put in, because the elevator engine cannot support that. So those are various things. A mamad, shelter. In all the buildings, they have a miklat down in the basement. Some buildings don't have a miklat. In all new construction built after 1996, in Israel. One of the bedrooms in the apartment is a mamad. It's a reinforced, the walls are reinforced, and
Steel
it has a
reinforced.
special window and door. So if chas v'chalila there's a war, you can use that as a shelter for the family, and you don't have to meet your neighbors with their pajamas in the middle of the night going downstairs to the basement of the building. So these are the basics. Now, as Gedaliah mentioned, there were a lot of horror stories in Israel over the years with all sorts of developers and stories of you paid, you didn't get what you were supposed to get to, or there's still a hole in the ground and you're waiting for 7 years and they haven't begun construction, and all sorts of different issues. What happened in 2006 is that the largest developer in Israel of residential real estate by the name of Hefziba went under. And that was when the Knesset, the parliament in Israel, realized that they have to protect buyers. It's not that they weren't protected prior to that, but the laws were dated and they didn't give enough securities for the buyers who are buying on paper in Israel. And therefore they put through a whole set of updated laws to protect buyers. And in a way today, I'll say that, but in a way, buying on paper, you're much more protected than buying something existing to certain aspects. I'm talking from the financial and legal perspective. Today, when you buy on paper, all developments have to have an escrow account, which is controlled by one of the 5 largest banks in Israel, or one of the insurance companies, the major insurance companies. And all money that belongs to this development, the income and outcome, what you pay for the apartment and the payments made by the developer to third parties for construction, all go through that account. You can't, if the developer calls you one day and says, listen, I'm marrying off my daughter next week, do you mind wiring me 100,000 shekels? I'll give you an account number. You can't do that. When you sign a contract to buy a new apartment in Israel, you get like a checkbook, and that every payment is made through that checkbook to a certain account. And in return to your payments, the bank who controls the money, the escrow account, will give you a bank guarantee for every penny you put down to secure your money and make sure that you will be getting what the contract says. There are legal penalties for a developer running late. There's a date on the contract. If he fails to give you the keys by that day, he has another 2 months of grace period. And if he continues being late, you get a monthly payment of the rental value of the apartment. Not only the rental value, but there's as well a penalty to that. You get 150%, 1.5 months rent every month until he gives you the keys. Now you would say, on the other hand, listen, he's got all these penalties, and so he'll cut corners, he'll build fast. And at the end of the day, the quality of the apartment will be run down, and there'll be issues, and he won't build well. And so what happens is, as part of the laws to protect your money, when you get the keys to a new property in Israel, an apartment, from the day you get the keys, you have up to a 7-year warranty, legal warranty. He can't limit it, the builder. It's part of the laws in Israel. And the first 12 months, every item in the apartment is under warranty. They figure out that, if people, you have to run systems and use the apartment for a year. And if after that year, everything's okay, so probably everything is okay. The only things that you get extended periods of warranty is plumbing. Plumbing is, sometimes the pipes are in the wall. There's nothing you can actually see and inspect. And therefore they give you an extra 2 years. So a total of 3 years on plumbing are under warranty. And the most extended period of warranty is 7 years. And that's for damp issues, for insulation. And the reason for that is they gave such a long period is that some winters, unfortunately, in Israel are dry, and you know you can't test the building and see that it's okay. But if it's been through seven winters, I assume we should assume that it was built well and there's no issues with insulation and with damp. So you're protected in terms of the period, the timetable, the schedule. You're protected, your money is protected, and you're protected in terms of the quality of construction. There's other protections, but we won't go into all, but that's the idea. So, and I'll say, to finish up this part about new construction, two things. One is, one of the advantages of buying on paper, if you buy early enough in the construction process, you can actually do some, to a certain extent, some changes in the apartment in a way that you customize it to your needs, and not only talking about choosing the color of the tiles and designing your kitchen, but even if you need, one bedroom, you have more girls than boys, and you want the girls' room to be a bit larger and the boys' room a bit smaller, and things like that, you can play around with that. And a lot of the in most developments, the builder has what they call a machleket shinui dayarim, a department of residence changes, and you or your designer can work along with them and make adjustments to the apartment. I will relate to a question I saw on the chat, and that's an excellent question. We spoke about renovating, but when you buy a new apartment, question is, okay, I bought a wonderful new apartment. Can I move in with my toothbrush? And the answer is no. New apartments in Israel do not include appliances. Any apartment in Israel doesn't include appliances. If you walk into a beautiful home, has beautiful appliances, the appliances are not included in the price. And closets. In Israel, we don't have walk-in closets. We have aronot, or wall closets. And I'll relate to the excellent question of Dvorah as well. And so when you buy on paper, you basically get 4 bare walls and a wire coming out of the ceiling. You'll still have to pay for light fixtures. You'll have to pay for closets being built. Now you can go and get IKEA closets. You can get even cheaper closets, or you can bring in a carpenter to build custom-made closets. It depends how much you want to spend or how much you have to spend. In terms of a kitchen, what they call in Israel mitbach kablan, the basic kitchen a builder gives is that it could be an excellent quality, but Israeli kitchens are not. Americans love the storage. I don't know if everybody on the program is American, but a religious family needs, more kitchen cabinets, because we have Fleishi and Milchik and Pesach and Parav and I don't know what else. So we need more kitchen cabinets. So you'll be upgrading your kitchens. So it's not like if you buy on paper, you can move in there, you get the keys, you have to take into account, you'll have to spend more money on the final finishes, but it always includes the bathrooms. Doesn't include, by the way, shower doors. No developers in Israel give shower door, the glass doors. That's not a big expense, but it's still money. And in most developments, I think all developments, I've never met a development in Israel that gives screens, mosquito screens. That's another thing. Again, not a big expense. It's about 3,000 shekels to put in screens in an entire apartment. But all these numbers add up, and it's more money to spend. In regards to the payment schedule, when you buy on paper, it depends which stage you're buying, and it depends on the specific developer. It's been trendy in the past few years. Strong developers offer what they call a 20-80 deal. You pay 20% when you sign and 80% when you get the keys. Not on the day you get the keys, a few weeks before, they have to make sure the payment clears. But the idea is you don't have middle payments. In most developments, if it's private equities and smaller developers, you'll have to pay as the construction goes along. Usually the down payment is around 25%. I won't break it up to you. There's a legal breakup. Your lawyer will explain it to you. You put down 7%, and you get a lien on the property. And only
You said you weren't going to explain it.
I'm just saying it in quick words. There's a certain legal procedure that has to be until you can actually forward larger amounts of money, but usually 20 to 25% upon signing, and then depends how long the construction is. If it's another 12 months, a figure within the 12 months, you'll have to pay everything. There'll be 1 or 2 payments in between. If it's a 3-year construction, so you'll have like every quarter, every 6 months, you'll have a payment of 20 or 25%, depends on the length and the developer, but it is usually negotiable as part of the terms of the deal.
Now, here was a good question, is buying on paper cheaper? And now this is an interesting question. It's an interesting question because you see, let's say, I remember someone was talking to me, was complaining, I want to buy in Modi'in, I want to buy one of these new communities in Modi'in, and it's more expensive than the existing communities. Why should I be buying there? Someone asked me just last week. Well, sometimes people were saying, if it's a new community, so why are they charging so much? New community isn't up. So Eliezer, we saw for a number of years that buying on paper is cheaper, but it's not necessarily cheaper. It might be just the market price at that point, but because you could push off a lot of your payments, let's say for 3 years until it's completed, by the time you get the keys, so the market goes up, and therefore it appears prices could be 15, 20% higher. We were involved in a lot of pre-sales in a project which many of you might have heard of called Givaot Eden, Eden Hills. And the prices started originally for the biggest semi-detached home at $2,650,000. It's a year and a half later, and the same homes are being sold for around 3.5 million shekel. So a lot of times, yeah, so a lot of times, if it's a new community, you buy at the beginning, the prices seem relatively cheap. You say, wait, I'm not sure if it's going to make it. I don't know if it's a quote unquote a bit of a risk, even though you have the bank guarantee that Eliezer discussed. And you have all these various things that are protecting you, but how do I know the community is going to reflect the type of crowd that I want to be with? So you're right, you don't have all those answers at the beginning. On the other hand, if it does take off, or like you say, Neve Shamir, in Ramat Beit Shemesh, the prices are just continuing to go up, and the prices continue to go up. So we do see, unless it's luxury, the prices tend to be, not always, like I said, Modi'in, etc. Prices tend to be at market, a little bit below market, because of the fact that you will not be getting the apartment for a number of years. To mortgages, we're going to talk about mortgages. We'll talk about mortgages very soon. So we're going to push that question off, but we will address it in a moment. Let's continue, okay? So all-in pricing. There is a lot that we're throwing at you today. What I will do is, and I mentioned it to Hillel and to Sophie before, I have a number of articles. I write a lot of articles. I have a number of articles that are how-to articles that discuss buying on paper, that discuss closing costs, that discuss, like Eliezer brought up about the bank guarantee. All of these types of articles, a bunch of how-to articles, I'll send them over to Hill and to Sophie, and they could send you the link, or they could post it somewhere. I recommend, because we're just touching upon a lot of these issues, for more information, you'll take a look at the articles, which God willing, I'll send you folks later. Okay, so the next issue we want to talk about, number 6, and we're going to move along very quickly. We're 80% of the way done, even though we're only 75% of the way through our timing. So we will, God willing, finish within an hour, is all-in pricing. There will be closing costs. Now, Eliezer talked about when you're buying on paper, there's some of the costs that the apartment doesn't have. You have to expect to buy the appliances. You have to expect to buy, if you want the doors around your shower, if you want to have your hour note. But in addition to that, Eliezer, there's closing costs, right? So if you're buying an apartment, and if you use an agent charges 2% plus VAT. If you're using a lawyer, we highly recommend you use a lawyer. Even if you, let's say, buy from a developer, and the developer says, no, you could use my lawyer. I want you to know the developer's lawyer is being paid by the developer. Get your own lawyer. For that alone, is worth you coming today and hearing that. Get your own lawyer. Lawyer will charge, it depends on the market, anywhere from 0.5 point to 1.5 points for the lawyer. You're going to have your acquisition tax. If you're an Olim, so then it starts at 0% for the first. If you're an Israeli, there's a special rate for Olim. A lot of people don't use that rate, Eliezer, right? They use the regular.
It depends on the size of the purchase. In smaller purchases, it doesn't pay to use the Olim discount. It's better off with the Israeli discount. If you're buying larger numbers, and I wish for everybody of you to be buying for more money,
Amen.
then it's advised to use the Olim discount.
Okay, so if let's say your parents who just want to buy a place in Israel because they want to be near you, for part of the year, their acquisition tax, their mas הכנסה starts at 5%. Mas רכישה, sorry. Mas רכישה, I'm getting all my masses confused. Unfortunately, there's too many, right? So the mas רכישה for an overseas buyer starts at 5% and rises. The mas רכישה for Israeli start at 0%, and I'll send out the information. It's about 0% for the first, let's say, approximately 1,750,000 shekel, and then for the next 300,000 shekel, approximately, it goes up to 3.5%. Then it's 5%, the mas רכישה above that. That's the regular Israeli rate for a person buying the primary home or first home. If an Israeli buys a second home, then they get charged, like an American, they get charged at a higher rate. As Eliezer said, there's also a special rate for people who make aliyah. It doesn't always pay, so you have to compare the numbers based upon the price of the apartment. That's closing costs. And then keep in mind, like we talked before, if your apartment needs renovation, keep that in mind. It's a puzzle. There are many pieces to your puzzle of buying a home in Israel, and you want to make sure all of these pieces of the puzzle, which have, financial commitments, are incorporated into your thinking, so that when you make your decision, you're making a decision that includes all of the costs that will be involved. And then we talked about, I'd say, renovations, but if you look at 6B, we talked about renovation and furnishing. And as Eliezer touched upon that as well, you're going to furnish your apartment. You can get basic stuff. You can get custom Italian-made furniture and a lot more money. But but keep all of these things in mind, not just the price of the apartment when figuring out your budget, because you don't just want an apartment, you also want beds to sleep in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That brings us to number 7. Number 7 is ongoing expenses. Eliezer, you want to run through ongoing? A lot of you will know about these ongoing expenses. If you're renting in Israel, you already know that. But go ahead.
Yeah, so the ongoing expenses are, first of all, usually the largest monthly expense is your arnona. It depends where you live. If you live in Jerusalem, you're paying double than in Beit Shemesh. Every town has its rates, but I'll use Jerusalem numbers. In Jerusalem, if your apartment is under 120 square meters, you're paying 100 shekels a square meter a year, and you can pay it in 12 installments. You don't have to pay it up front. And if your apartment is larger than 120 square meters, you'll be paying 120 shekels a square meter from the first square meter. That's Jerusalem. Within Jerusalem, there's different areas. There's 4 different areas, but the majority of central Jerusalem are the numbers I said. If you move a bit out, so it will be 90 shekels a square meter and 110. But those are the numbers, around 100 shekels a square meter. I can tell Beit Shemesh is 60.
Around that 55, 60s, around there.
55, 60. In Efrat, it's 50 shekels. Different towns, it's different numbers. That's number 1. Number 2 is the building maintenance. If you live in a building that has an elevator, and a nice garden around the building, and there's a gardener who comes in once a week. Well, next year the gardener won't be coming in because it's Shemitah, but in a regular year they replanting and cleaning and watering and so. And that's a significant expense. And the elevator, if there's a Shabbat elevator, it's probably going to cost more. If there's 2 elevators, 2 elevators. It depends on the nature of the building. I can tell you in buildings in Jerusalem, in newer buildings, by the way, there's a management company. It's not managed by the board of residents, but it's managed by a professional company. And then it goes up a bit because they have to make some money, and it's professionally managed, and they have a team working daily in the building. So you'll be paying a bit more. Figure in Jerusalem, again, in a building with no elevator, you'd probably, for a 3-bedroom, you'd be paying something like 150 shekels a month. In a building with an elevator, probably closer to 300. And in a managed building, the numbers climb towards the 500, 600 shekels. If there's a pool in the building, a gym in the building, then the numbers go up, but we won't go through that. So we've spoken about the taxes. The municipality taxes are called arnona. We spoke about the building maintenance. Then you have your utilities, Wi-Fi, phone, TV, things like that, electricity, water.
Do people
Depends
still
on.
have TV? Telephone? 'Cause I don't know.
Some people have a telephone at home. Not most people don't even have landlines anymore. But these things add up. So these are the ongoing costs of living in an apartment. And another one point that I highly advise, and not a lot of people are aware of, if you have a mortgage, you're covered. The mortgage forces you to do a property insurance. But if you lucky enough and you don't have a mortgage on your home, make sure you have a property insurance. It's very inexpensive in Israel. It's about 100 shekels a month. It's worth every penny, because chas v'chalila, there's a plumbing issue or something, and you're not only causing damage to your property, but another property, your neighbor's apartment is damaged. You don't want to be the one paying for that, and you should be covered by property insurance. Highly recommended.
Okay, Eliezer. So that's basically there were a number of questions here I want us to address. So we'll quickly go through. That's ongoing expensive. We have finances. Finances we talked about. If you want to get yourself a mortgage, an Israeli buying a first home, they could borrow 70 to up to 75% of the purchase price. Right? Now, unlike in America, you say, I can get myself a fixed mortgage, I can get myself a variable rate mortgage. In Israel, they slice it and they dice it. So a portion of it is going to be fixed. The fixed rate nowadays is probably around, 3.5%, 3%.
Yeah.
The variable rate nowadays is 2%. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Around that. Okay. But when these people borrow, they get the 75%. And the question is, a lot of times people ask the question, well, what happens if I want to buy on paper and I don't have the 25% down now? Can I take, the 75% coming to me from the mortgage company? Can I have them pay the first 75%? I'll pay 25% at the end of 2 years and I'll have the money. And the answer
is no. It's no. The bank wants you to put in your equity first, and only after you've completed paying your share in the apartment, they'll step in and put in the future payments.
Okay. And so get yourself, as we said before, there are a bunch of questions and we're going to get to them. Don't worry. All these questions are great. We're going to get to them. So get yourself pre-approved, as we said, before you sign your contract. In America, we think the magic legal moment, and Tony asked one of these questions, is that closing at the very end, when I get the keys. In Israel, the magic legal moment is when you sign the contract. From the moment you sign a contract is the moment you have a legal right to the property. And therefore, what that means is, which will address one of the questions, it means is that the lawyer gets paid at the sign of the contract. The agent gets paid at the time of the signing contract. Don't worry, if you use us, you're stuck with us. That's if you buy on paper. If you don't buy paper, 3 years later, even if you buy your apartment, you call us, we're here for you. But you have to understand that there's what happens at the signing of the contract. You have a legal right. Your lawyer is going to go the next day and put an easement against the property saying that you're buying the property. And it's a funny thing to say, but it's within 60 days of signing your contract. There are some exceptions, and your lawyer could talk about it. But the basic law is within 60 days of signing a contract, you pay your acquisition tax. You say, what am I paying my acquisition tax? I'm not, even if it's existing, I'm not closing in for 7-8 months. Why am I paying the acquisition tax? Or if you're buying on paper and you say, there's only clouds there, it's not going to be ready for 2.5 years. Why am I paying my acquisition tax? The answer is because you have a legal ownership right at that point. And it's interesting, actually. I mean, there are exceptions. Like when you're buying on paper, if you're Israeli, you can push off paying this acquisition tax until you have put down 50% of the money. But just for you to understand, it's different than in America in that magic legal moment is the signing of the contract and not at the very end. So that was number 8. Number 9, we talked about management, which really doesn't apply to you. That's for overseas buyers. Get yourself a manager. If you're 6,000 miles away, God forbid any issues come up and you want someone to be your eyes and ears. And number 10, I said it before, I'll end with this, and then we're going to deal with all your questions, is referrals. I have a friend of mine, he's a PhD, he's one of the most brilliant people I know. And he said he's getting himself an apartment. I said, how did you choose your lawyer? He said, I opened up the yellow pages. This lawyer had a full page color ad. I said, you're so smart and you're so dumb. Ends up the lawyer that he chose was very good. But that's not the, ask us, ask your friends. Make sure you get referrals before you choose a lawyer, before you choose an agent, before you choose a designer. You're spending a lot of money. For a lot of you, it's going to be the biggest purchase of your lives. And make sure you surround yourself with good people. We will be happy if people have questions, they want to get some referrals. We're happy to give you names of good, honest people that our clients have used in the past. Now, that's officially the end of the program, but there were a lot of good questions. So let's run through the questions, okay? Is borrowing on paper, we said, do mortgages cover only what is not the down payment, or can mortgages also cover some portion of the down payment? Right. So what we said was, let's say if you get a mortgage of 75%, you have to first put down the first 25%. Sometimes they'll let you put down 20%, they'll pay the next 75%, and you'll pay the final 5%. But basically, you have to expect that the banks want, as they say, they want to see your feet to the fire. They're not the only ones who are taking risks, that you understand the serious nature of your loan, and therefore they want you to have put down your money. Is there anything different about buying on paper from a Tama 38 project, Eliezer?
So very quickly, there's two kinds of Tama 38, Tama 38-1 and Tama 38-2. Tama 38-1 is when they keep the existing building and they basically add floors to it, they extend the existing apartments, and they renovate the communal infrastructure of the building. Tama 38, by the way, for people who do not know, is a national plan in Israel to enforce buildings that were built prior to 1980 to be—
that were not earthquake resistant.
They were
right?
not earthquake resistant, in order to make them earthquake resistant. So that plan basically gives extra building rights to each building in Israel, and the homeowners in the building can trade it off with a developer. He'll build new apartments, sell them, and make money, and in return he does all this work for the building. So and Tama 38-2 is when they tear down the older building and they build a brand new apartment building. So Tama 38-2 and buying on paper is exactly the same. There's no difference. Technically, legally, and I would say legally, there's a slight difference, but I'm not going into it. That's a legal question that your lawyer will give you the directions about that. In terms of Tama 38-1, the difference, there's a difference because the existing building exists. So the building itself, you know, if you're expecting modern amenities of a modern building, some of the amenities won't come in a building that's going through a Tama 38-1 when they keep the older building, although they'll give it a facelift. But let's say they can't dig 2 floors of underground parking and storage rooms under an existing building, or they can't make the stairwell wider, or if there's a place to put in only 1 elevator, you want to have 2 elevators in the building. So there's technical limitations when you buy in Tama 38-1. Plus, again, I'm making a comment to discuss with your lawyer, the legal protections you're getting on Tama 38-1 need to be slightly different than in buying on paper. You have to be protected differently, and you make sure that your lawyer knows that and knows what he's doing.
I would say, as an aside, just about lawyers, if you speak to a lawyer and you say, what's your area of specialty? And they say, well, I do family law, I do trusts and estates, I do corporate work, and I also do real estate. You probably don't want to use them, especially when you're buying on paper. You want to get yourself a lawyer who does real estate transactional work. That's what you want. You don't want them focused on anything. You don't want them thinking about, I mean, they might also do trust and estates. You want them focused on that. You know, if it's buying something that's existing, so still there's a lot of issues, but okay, in that situation, if they do a number of things and they buy for you, and if it's a plain vanilla deal, that's okay. But when you bring on buying on paper, there's a certain level of sophistication that is required on the part of your lawyer to make sure that all of your legal rights are being enforced and that he can advocate on your behalf. So again, we said it before, but a good lawyer is worth the weight in gold. Let's see other questions. Does the lawyer get paid even if you don't close? Well, the lawyer, as we said before, at the magic legal moment in buying a home in Israel is signing the contract, not at the closing at the end. And therefore the lawyer gets paid after that moment. Now we had, once or twice people had to pull out. And, even though we officially do get paid after signing the contract, obviously, if someone's in a tough financial situation, we'll work with them and we're not looking to take advantage of them. And hopefully you'll be working with a lawyer who also has a sense of Rahmanis. That's what we are, B'nai Yisrael. And hopefully we'll surround ourselves with good people. Someone young who doesn't have 25% to put down, how should they work towards buying a home? Are their projects geared to our age? Young people want to buy a home in Israel. Prices are restrictive. What should they do to get to the point to be able to buy a home, Eliezer?
So I'll tell you a personal thing about myself. I live in a neighborhood called Old Katamon in Jerusalem, which unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of Jews want to live here. That's why I'm saying it's fortunate. It is a very expensive neighborhood. Now, when we were a young couple, we just got married. We got a bit of help from our parents. We bought a small apartment. Actually, back then in Israel, you could get a 95% mortgage as an Israeli. So we were lucky enough. We had the 5% and we took this crazy mortgage for 30 years. But then when Baruch Hashem, we were onto our third child and we were in this tiny sardine box apartment, we needed to move and we couldn't afford, we wanted to stay in the neighborhood. So we had two options, either sell that and buy in the suburb of Jerusalem or in one of the Yishuvim in the Gosh or something, or stay in the neighborhood. And what we did is we rented out our apartment and we rented out something larger, which we couldn't afford to buy. And so we're getting some rent and we're paying the difference. It's not a wonderful situation, but it's a solution. And I've been renting for the past, I guess, 13 years, happily married and in an apartment I love, in the neighborhood I love. So it is advised to own something, because it's an anchor, a financial anchor. So if you can't afford where you want to live, maybe look, up north, down south, there's more affordable areas, buy something and you can become own, something in Israel, which is a big zchut, and renting it out and use the rent towards renting somewhere you want to live. And please God, as you get older, your financial situation should become better, your earnings, your savings, and so you can always sell that at a premium, because the markets continue going up in Israel for the good track record for the past 30, 40 years. The apartments are going only in one direction, and use that equity towards buying something somewhere you want. But there's no magic in this market, in the real estate market. You have to have equity, and it's an expensive and tough market.
And I have a relative of mine where they bought for the kids an apartment in up north. Buy yourself. By the way, if you do buy yourself an apartment, it was just to rent out. But don't buy yourself an apartment in a market where there's a small population center, because if God forbid you need that income that's generated from that apartment to be able to use that to rent the apartment where you in another place where you're the renter. If you're in a large population center, you lose a tenant. As long as you rent it out into the market pricing, there'll be a lot of tenants. If you buy something if you buy an apartment in a small community and you lose your tenant, sometimes that apartment could lay fallow, as it were, since you're talking about Shemitah, for a year. So you really want to make sure that if you're buying something that you're not going to be using, but it's something you can afford to buy, that's in a large population center. So I remember a friend of mine wanted to buy an apartment. He said, "Look, Gedaliah, it's Tiberia, 7% return." I said, "Yeah, but God forbid you lose your tenant, it goes down to 0% return." So when you do think of doing what Eliezer was saying in terms of buying something that's smaller, either in the market we want to be in or in another market where at least to generate income and to build up your equity, just make sure that you're in a market where if you're going to need that money from the rent, that it's a large enough population center that you'll be able to get in another tenant quickly. Regarding, let's go through your questions. Regarding lawyers, is there something that prevents them from pressuring you to close on a bad contract just so they get paid?
No,
You got
the
the wrong
answer is
lawyer.
no.
You got yourself a bad lawyer if they're pressuring you. They should. You
Yeah,
should
but
not.
he can lose he can lose his license if he does things illegal, and if he did something which harms you, you can sue him. Make sure, by the way, the lawyers you use have a profession insurance policy, because if there are issues, you want to be protected.
But basically, you should not be working. Any lawyer, a good lawyer, is going to make sure that you are not going to be signing a contract that has problems, that there are no issues. Remember we said, once you sign your contract, it goes hard. All the due diligence occurs beforehand, and that includes all the legal due diligence. If it's a bad situation, a bad contract, a bad deal, then that by the time that you're after contract signing, you should have been able to walk away by then. And your lawyer should be steering you. A good lawyer doesn't only serve as your legal advocate, but also serves as your business advocate. So, choose well from the beginning. As I said, now this is the third time I'm saying it, a good lawyer is worth their weight in gold, because they should be guiding you. They shouldn't be the one pressuring you into a bad situation. They should be pressuring you away from bad situations. How can you understand, the next question, how can you understand what an average cost is for an X-room apartment? I'm not sure what 25% of a mortgage comes down to in terms of shekels.
So it really depends in which market you're buying. If you're buying a $1 million shekel apartment in Karmei Gat, so 25% is
no more. There's no more 1 million in Karmei Gat. Say 1.3 million.
Whatever. If you're buying a 1 million shekel apartment, you're paying 250,000 shekels. That's 25% of the mortgage. That's your equity plus the closing costs. If you're buying $1 million property, so you need $250,000. So it really depends where you're buying and what you're buying.
Okay. How much income do you need to have in order to get X amount of mortgage from the bank? If you want to go to the bank, and what do you need?
So I'll tell you that.
Good question. These are all excellent questions.
The rule of thumb says that your monthly return can't be more than 1/3 of your income. But being young people, I can tell you again from personal experience, when I took my mortgage, when I bought my apartment, when we got married, my wife wasn't working at the time and I was the only income at home. And the return of mortgage was over 50% of my salary. And I asked the bank and he said, yeah, you're right that it's only 1/3, but because we're looking about your income ability, your wife will, please God, begin to get a job and start earning. So we're not concerned as the bank. But if you're both of you working and you have an X amount of income, they won't let you go beyond the 1/3 of your income in terms of return.
In terms of mortgage payments, a mortgage rate better when paying more than 25%. What's the ideal percentage of the down payment to put
It doesn't really make a difference.
I remember I recently took out a mortgage. It was a great mortgage. It was 2.5%. It was for 50% mortgage. If I wanted to get more like a 60 or 70% mortgage, it would go up to about 3%. So if you're in a position where you don't have to borrow as much, then your interest rate will be a little bit lower. But most of the time, if you need to take out 70%, so then that's you might not be in that position. Is Pinui Binui, Eliezer? What are the rights of the owners? Would it be worth it to buy an apartment as an investment with the plan of getting a new one that is significantly better after 2 to 4 years?
Okay, so there's
we got an offer today on this situation.
Yeah, you're talking about two different things. You're talking about Pinui Binui is one plan and 38B is a different plan. They're both the same concept. The idea is, the question is referring not to one of the new properties in the development, but should I be buying, if I know a building is going through a plan, Should I be buying an apartment hoping that, in 2 or 4 years, it would be, the existing apartment will be worth much more because it will be rebuilt and it will be in a modern building and a larger apartment. So first of all, living in Israel, no plan happens in 2 to 4 years. Realistically, these plans take time. The average is between 5 to 10 years. If the developer is very efficient and there are no issues and bumps along the process and everything is smooth, it would take 5 years, realistically closer to 10 years from the day the deal, the negotiations begin between the owners and the developer. It's not like you're putting in buying an apartment now and 2 years later, you're getting something that's worth 50% more. So that's optimistic. Realistically, it's not going to happen. On the other hand, and we can give you example what Gedaliah just said, we have this couple who are they're renting in Beit Shemesh. They decided not to buy at the time, and they want to retire to Jerusalem in 10 years' time. They can't afford what they want to live in, to buy today what they want to live in 10 years' time. But they told us, listen, show us apartments in buildings that have the potential. We don't know for sure, there's no full proof, but have the potential that will be torn down in the next few years, rebuilt, and then we'll get a modern apartment in a new building with all the amenities of a new apartment. So we're buying into the market now. We're not paying top dollars, and hopefully by the time we're ready to retire into Jerusalem, we have a brand new apartment in a new building. So there's ways of minimizing the risk. If the majority of the neighbors needed have already signed the agreement, sometimes there's a committee approval already for the plans. It's much more advanced. The more it's advanced, the more you're paying a premium on the apartment, because the seller will be wanting to get more money because his property is worth more. He's not selling a dream, he's selling something which is becoming more and more real. So you won't be making all the money, he will be making some, and you'll be making some. So it depends. It's a risk management process.
No, but it's a wonderful idea. People do buy as because they want to buy something. Buying something like these old shikun buildings, these old buildings that were built in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, the next question is expand on buying land and building our own apartment with a kablan or by ourselves. So basically, you're talking about development, being a developer. I'll say the following: if you think you're going to save money, in other words, if you can buy the same house next door. And you know the bottom line, and that's what it's going to cost. And you think, well, I'll buy the land for an X amount. I'll build. You bringing a kablan, and he says, I'll build you the house for an X amount. So I'll be paying this plus this, and I'm saving a lot of shekels in the process. I can tell you the bottom line, from experience of most of our clients, it's very rare you save money. You're not a developer. You're not a builder. You don't know what surprises along the line. What you have no protection if your kablan goes under in the middle of construction, your builder, and you have to bring in someone new, so you're losing the money, not your developer. Whereas if you're buying something that from a developer and there's a price, that price is the bottom line. There's no surprises along the line. So
other than we didn't touch upon, which we'll send an article about, is that all unpaid portions of the purchase price when you're buying on paper is subject to the madad.
The madad, the index, construction index. But
now people like to get people scared because over the past few months, it's gone up a lot, like 3.5%. But if you look at the past 10 years, it's going up by about 1.5% a year. A lot of people are thinking it's kind of resetting itself because last year it went down, the madad, during Corona. So now it's kind of resetting. And some people are saying, no, it's just a whole new beginning of changes. I don't have a crystal ball. We can't say for sure. But that's just one thing to keep in mind. But Eliezer's point is, when you're building it yourself, you have to understand, yes, you get to choose this and get to choose that. But if you're thinking that you can be saving money, almost all the time you do not save money. Next question is, what's the best way to actually find a place to buy? Does the real estate need to be in the area? Is Yad Shtayim an option? Eliezer.
So I'll say the following. Yad Shtayim is a good option it's very, you'll find out, and if you've tried using Yadstein, especially agents, but as well homeowners don't always remove their ads after they sell or after they decide they're not interested in selling or when it's under offer. So you can see things on Yadstein, get very excited and then call and they say, oh yeah, we sold it a year ago, or we don't know what ad you're talking about. We don't remember ever putting in this ad. That's if you call a real estate agent. The agents are not that up to date, and they don't keep the information as well on the websites of most real estate agencies. They're not up to date, and a lot of the properties are irrelevant. But it's a good place to start. It depends on the markets. I can tell you that a market like Jerusalem, which is the demand way overstrips the supply, a lot of properties get sold under the radar. And if you want a certain area, we advise you connect with an agent and a local agent who you rely on, and have him keep his eyes open and search for you, because a lot of the properties don't end up never hitting the market, and you hear about them only after they sell, and then you say, well, had I known about it, I would have bought it. But so there's no way you'll know about it unless you connect with an agent. I'll say a second thing, and again, it's not foolproof. It goes both ways. A lot of, especially young people, and it's legitimate to save money. Agents' fees is a big lump of expense. If you're buying for 1 million shekels, 2% plus VAT is 20,000 shekels plus VAT, 23,400 shekels. It's big money. And if you're buying for larger numbers, it's even larger numbers. So you would say to yourself, what do I need an agent? I'll go onto Yadstein, I'll see the ad, I'll contact the agent directly, or sometimes developments. I can tell you, we've sold in new developments. Like there's a development in Jerusalem called Bustan Baka, which was marketed in beginning in 2013 until 2016. And we sold over 70 units there. Now, we had a relationship because we negotiated so much with the developer. We knew what's the final price, how much we can push and squeeze the prices. And we know for sure, we've met a client of ours in a building that we sold. There were 9 apartments in that building. We happened to sell 5 of them or 6 of them. And this guy was so proud of himself, Canadian Ole Chadash. He went to the sales office and he bought it himself. He saved the agent's fee to 2%, but the reality was he paid 6% more than our clients paid for.
Yeah, he said, I got a 4% savings and I saved my broker's fee. He felt so good. And we didn't say anything. That's like, why did that make him feel bad? But he left a lot of money on the table.
And again, as I said, it's not always true. Sometimes you can be the owner. Not only that, the agents usually, I always say I bought 1 apartment in my life, and I've been an agent for 18 years. I've sold probably over 1,000 units in these 18 years. So I've negotiated so much over the past 18 years. We know how to negotiate. We usually do it better than the average person who's buying 1 or 2 or 3 apartments in his lifetime. But if you're not comfortable paying for an agent, you don't have to. You can go onto Yadstein. You can find apartments today. You can find a lot of information online and buy an apartment through Yadstein or other websites.
Right, and also oftentimes, your friend or cousin will tell you about an apartment in their building that's for sale. You might get an opportunity. Just keep your eyes open. Look at the big picture. Be smart. What are the next question? We got a lot of questions.
Here. I think we're going to do one last question. I think we're going to do the question of the 1/3 of your salary to get a specific mortgage. Is it brutto or is it netto?
Netto.
I think it's a netto income. What you earn, your monthly earning.
Okay. Let me just say one thing. You will have a lot more questions. We'll be happy to answer them. Sophie, Hill, if you want, we can give you names of good, honest mortgage brokers. Maybe you want to run a program on that. There's a lot of good questions and a lot of, questions about church land, but we're going to end it here because else we'll keep on going forever. We thank you very much. It was a pleasure being with you this evening, and we wish you tremendous hatzlachat And it's a great opportunity, which is Shana Tova, a year filled with good health, happiness, shalom bayit, and hatzlacha b'chol ma'aseh yidechem.
Thank you guys so
Amen.
much.
We want to thank you guys so much for your information, for all the knowledge that you gave to us. Thank you so much for all who have joined. I hope that you gained a lot of information and learned a lot. All this information about the how-to pages will be posted on our website, Yad Olim's website. Also, all you guys already took the step of making Aliyah. Go to our website, fill out the buddy form, help those that are starting the process now, whether it's Army Shirut or university, spread your knowledge. Also, next week, we're having another exciting event on understanding tax in Israel. Super important. The flyer will be going out soon with a sign-up link. And for now, we want to wish you a Laila Tov, Shana Tova, and we can't wait to see you at our next webinar. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.